This week's Parashat Tzav, it deals with many of the laws of Karbanos, and as well, it's Shabbos Hagadol, which is the Shabbos before Pesach. So we'll talk a little bit about Parashat Tzav and tie it into some issues regarding Pesach. So the Parashat tells us, the Torah tells us in Perek Yud Aleph Pasuk Yud Beis, Imal Toda Yakriven, there's halakha of Karban Toda, that there's a time when you want to thank God for a miracle, so therefore there's a special Karban you bring. Toda, as we know, Toda means thanks. It's a Thanksgiving offering and you give it. So we don't have a Beis HaMikdash today, so we don't bring Karbanos. However, the Gemara tells us in Brachos, Nun Daled Amar Beis, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Arba Tzrichim Laholdos. 4 types of situations require thank you. Of course, we'll explain all situations require thank you, but here we're talking about a specific thank you here. 4 types of events require thank you. Yordei Hayam, you cross over the sea. These are all dangerous things that you survived. So, Yordei Hayam, so crossing over the sea. One may discuss today whether it's the same danger or not, and whether that warrants a Birchas Hagoma or not, but we'll assume it does for our purposes. Yordei Hayam, crossing over the sea, by definition is a danger. Hoche Mibarios, traveling in the desert. Umisha Hayachola V'nisrape, someone who is sick and got better. Then you say Birchas Hagoma. Umisha Haya Chavish B'Veis Asurim, or someone who is in jail and they got out. On these 4 things, the Gemara says you have to. We'll see. You make a Birchas Hagomel. You make a bracha. That's what people get up when they come from Israel, go to Israel, come back. On different types of trips, or you're in an accident, different things like that. So the custom is you usually get an aliyah, but you don't have to have an aliyah. And then you get up and you make the bracha of the Birchas Hagomel. That God, you make a public declaration that He saved me with a miracle. So the Marshal writes, that's the Yam Shel Shlomo in Baba Kama, Perek Zayin, Siman Lam and Zayin. V'nira, he says, from here we learn from this Gemara that these 4 people required to have Hodah, Tzrichim Lahodos, Kol Suda Sha'adam Oseh, Shalo Kederach Marias Simcha Kadei Shevach Hamakom. Any person who makes a Suda for the primary purpose of thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or lefarseim HaMitzvah, or to publicize a miracle that happened, or to publicize a mitzvah, Korei Sudas Mitzvah. This is the definition of a Sudas Mitzvah. And that's also the concept is, and the Chai Adam brings it down in Hilchos Megillah, if a miracle happens to you or to a certain town, so every year on that date you have a special Sudas. In fact, my brother went through there was a New Jersey transit accident. His friend next to him, unfortunately passed away. He was seriously injured, but, Baruch Hashem, he came out of it. So every year on that day, you have a Sudas Hodah. So thanking God for the miracles, whether saving you from different danger, etc. Of course, we'll see this. It's a miracle that you don't get into danger. Also, and every day is a miracle. But in turn, here's a specific. Chazal warranted in a case where you're in danger and you survive. Of course, you have to be thankful. Maybe even more that you weren't in danger. Maybe that's more to be thankful for. But here we're talking about someone who's in danger and came out of it, or apparent, or potential danger anyway. Because if it was real danger, you wouldn't be able to go. In other words, the question is, if these places are dangerous, I think the Binyan Sion raises this question, then how am I allowed to travel in the desert? How am I allowed to So apparently it's not, you're not putting yourself in sakana. These are all potential things where things could go wrong. Obviously to walk in a dangerous place is usher, minatorah. You can't put yourself in danger. So obviously there's a difference between what, in both directions. You always thank God everything you have in life, even if you're not in danger. And you're not allowed to go in a place which is real sakana. So obviously we're talking about it's a lower level, it's a potential danger, and in these situations, the Chachamim said, Abar Tzrichim Ahodas, these four people, these situations, one has to have a special hodah. In the Gemara, in the Torah, they had a karban toda. They brought the sacrifice, and now we make a sudas hodah. Well, we make the berachas hagomel. In fact, there's a famous nitziv on this week's parsha regarding the karban toda. The nitziv is in Parshat Tzav in the Hemek Davar, Perek Zayin Pasuk Yud Gimel. Assuming I could see correctly, but it looks like that. Umitam Zeh, he writes, Mitam Zeh Davar Akasav Ba'arba'im. That's why, if you look at the amount, it's a tremendous amount of food the Torah says you have to eat for the karban tamid, karban toda, for the Thanksgiving. And if you, without going into all the details, are important, but if you compare and contrast the different types of karbanos, similar sacrifices, the karban toda is really unique in the sense there's much more food than usual, and there's a much smaller time frame to eat it in. So the Tzav asks, what's that all about? Why is it for a karban toda, for a Thanksgiving sacrifice, there's so many, 40 loaves of bread, etc. Why so much food in such a little time? So therefore the Tzav writes a tremendous yisod. He writes, if he doesn't, I'll just tell you, I think it's in here. Call the Zer Ratan Hashem. What is the Torah? What's the message of the Torah here? She Yasmin Harbe Orchem Yasa Suda. That you should get a lot of guests and prepare a Suda, make a big barbecue for many people. Because the point is, when you're thanking God over a nace, over a miracle, is a mitzvah persume nisa. You publicize it, and therefore you have a mitzvah to tell it as many people as possible to know about it and let them join in the Sudas mitzvah. Haino im hayazman achilas toda shnei yom u'layla echad yocha karban imishpa. If it was if the Torah just wanted us to eat it with your family, it would have gave less food in a smaller zman. But why did it give such a big amount of food in a small time? Because that's the whole purpose, that you have to go, God wants you to go publicize it. Publicize the miracle and tell them, wow, how I survived this accident, I did that, you hear that miracle, what happened. It's all about persume nisa. In fact, there's an interesting Brisker Rav. The Brisker writes on Parashas Yisro, on the Pasuk, where Yisapir Moshe told over the story to Yisro, his father-in-law. So the Brisker Rav says a big chiddush. He says it's a special halacha we learned. The yesh din miyuchad shel tzipor nisim. There's a special halacha that there's a mitzvah to tell over if a miracle happened to you or you witnessed a miracle. You don't keep it inside. It's a mitzvah to spread it, because he quotes the pasuk Yisapru Masa Barina from Tehillim, and therefore he writes, K'shabah Yisro, v'hu lo yada mikol. When he went to Yisro, Yisro didn't know about all the miracles. Miyad Kiya Moshe Rabbeinu Dinzeh Sho Yisapru Masa Barina. U'achein Yeshtin She Yatzuk Uvarach Berchas Hagomel. And that's why the reason is we always try to make Berchas Hagomel in front of 10 people. Because the whole point is publicizing the miracle, and with all types of publications, when we're trying to publicize things, we try to do it b'tzibor in a minyan. So that's the yisod of the karban toda. The karban toda is we're giving a special karban, thanking Hashem for the tremendous miracles. The Gemara in Brachas tells us, and that's the halacha to the berchas hagomel. There are strichim hodos. You have the people in crossing over the ocean, the deserts, sick and gets better, and escapes from jail. And we see the Marshal writes in the Yam Shel Shlomo that you have a mitzvah to make a Suda to publicize the miracle. Just like the Chai Adam writes in Hilchos Megillah, if you have a special town, there's an issue in general of making a miracle, making a Kolei Yontif for the whole Klal Yisrael. That's a separate issue of if you get into Baal Tosef and other things. Can you add a new holiday for the whole Klal Yisrael? But you can or not. It's an open question. We'll discuss it when we get there. But the point being is, but for yourself or a family or a town, that the Chai Adam writes, Bishar lo neis v'kedom nera the oso suda she'osim b'shil haneis he sudas mitzvah. And therefore, he says, he goes through how they they make miracles, they made the meals for those times. And that's what the Shiltis writes, the Mechavim Beisrael V'shavcheg, and that's what the Shiltis writes, the Chayavim Beisrael Lahodos. The Jewish people have an obligation to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the miracles that happen. And so, what's interesting to note, we have a similar yisod that we see. You have an obligation when you have major accomplishments. Similarly, the Tzav writes and other Achronim Rishonim. In fact, we see by Purim, which wasn't that long ago, we know usually Chanukah and Purim are very similar, albeit there are many differences as well. As we say Hallel on Chanukah, we don't say Hallel on Purim. So when there's a difference, you ask why. In other words, the working assumption is that similar, both rabbinical mitzvahs, rabbinical holidays, and there are many similarities, and the rule of thumb is they're similar. When they're different, we ask why. What's the distinction? So one distinction is the Gemara asks why do we say Hallel on Chanukah and on Purim? So the Gemara gives three reasons. Because either we are still slaves of Achashverosh, we do say Hallel, it's Kriyas HaMegillah, or thirdly, we were still, the first one actually, that the miracle happened in Chutz La'aretz, in Persia. So therefore, so another distinction they ask is, how come when it comes to Purim, there's a Chi of Suda, there's an obligation to have a meal. However, when it comes to Chanukah, it's praiseworthy. It says you should have Divrei Torah, Shiros v'Tishpachos, turn it into a Sudas Mitzvah, but there's no Chiyuv. So why by Purim, yes, a Chiyuv Suda, and by Chanukah, no? So there's a famous answer of the Lavush, that has to do with the fundamental theme of Chanukah versus Purim. Chanukah, the Greeks were all about, they didn't want us dead. They wanted us to take on the Greek culture. And when we didn't, that's when they attacked. But by Purim, it wasn't about, they wanted us dead. Haman's a Hitler. Hitler is a Haman. Lahashme, Lahara is called Yehudim. He just wanted to kill the Jews. If your mother's Jewish, father is Jewish, there's nothing you can do about it. If you're Jew, we want you dead. We weren't asking you to convert. We're not asking you to take on our culture. We want you dead. So Chanukah was much more of a spiritual thing, the Greeks trying to get us assimilated and forget the Torah. And by Purim it was much more physical. So Lavush has a famous answer. We celebrate the appropriate way. By Chanukah it was a spiritual attack. So we celebrate with Ner Chanukah. Chanukah represents Torah. We celebrate in a spiritual way. By Purim it was a physical thing. And therefore we celebrate by eating. So that's the answer of the Lavush, that one was physical, one was spiritual. And that's why, in fact, that explains it. There's a Gemara in different places wants to know, Mordechai min ha-Torah minayin. Where's the source for Mordechai in the Torah? It quotes the Pasuk Mordrar. Hama min ha-Torah minayin. You find them in Gan Eden of all places. Esther, so the Gemara asks for allusions to the people in the Purim story, where it's in the Torah. Yet the Gemara never asks Matisyo min ha-Torah. The characters in Purim, the Gemara doesn't ask the question. The question is why. So I think it's Rav Shlomo Kruger, I believe. He points out a beautiful pshat, is because certain miracles God set up during Sheishish May Bereshit, already fixed into the creation. So when it came to Purim, so we already know it was a physical thing, so therefore, you could say Purim and Torah minayin. But by Chanukah, it's all about free choice. Jews don't have to convert, or Jews don't have to assimilate. So you couldn't necessarily have it built in to what was going to happen. But we'll go into more on Purim time. But that's what the Levush writes, the basic difference, physical and spiritual. But there's a famous answer of the Shiltis, along the lines we're saying here about Hoda ala Nes, thanking God on a miracle. Because he points out, you know why we have a Sudam Purim? Because the Gemara tells us in Shabbos, and Daf Peiches, the Gemara says, Vayityatzvu b'tachtus sahar. The Torah tells us, and the Jewish people encamped underneath the mount. So the question is, so the Gemara says, what do you mean b'tachtus sahar? That God put a mount over their heads. If you accept the Torah, good. If not, here it will be your burial grounds. So okay, if that's easy. You press the staple buttons. Is that what it is? That was easy, and of course, okay, in that case, I'll accept the Torah if you put it that way. And therefore, the Jews said yes. So the Gemara says, "Mikan moda rabba d'oraisa." From here, the Gemara says that we see that the acceptance of the Torah was given under duress. So if just like if someone puts a gun to you and says, "I want you to commit that you owe me $1,000," and you have a gun, okay, I owe you $1,000. I'll say whatever you want me to say. After the guy leaves, that's it. You're not obligated, because something done under duress is not binding. So the question is, the Torah was given under duress, and the Torah is not binding. So the Gemara answers, you're right, but kimu v'kiblu. During the time of Purim, they accepted the Torah b'ava. So you could discuss the Jews up until Purim, whether they're responsible for keeping the Torah or not. But we're post-Purim, so for us it's not an issue. We accepted the Torah b'ava, and therefore it's binding. So we see that Purim is a day of Kabbalah Torah, of acceptance, re-acceptance of the Torah, and that's why they point out. The Ramban points out in Parashas Mishpatim. It says the Jews were partying at Mount Sinai. So some people fault them. It's a discussion in Chazal. But the Ramban says, Vayochu vayishtu. Why were they partying? We learn a very important halacha from here. Jews know how to party. But what's the halacha is that any time you have any accomplishment by Torah, you're chayav to make a suda. By Purim, it was a re-accepting of the Jewish people. Vayochu vayishtu. We got the Torah at Mount Sinai. Chayav laso suda. You're obligated to have a sudas hodah, sudas mitzvah. Purim, we have Kabbalah HaTorah. That's why we're chayav. There's no Kabbalah HaTorah in Chanukah, hence no chayav suda. But on Purim there was a Kabbalah HaTorah, hence a chayav suda. And that's the minhag of when someone makes a siyum, they finish a certain part of learning, they have a party afterwards. That's based on this. Any type of accomplishment with Torah, you make a party. In fact, and similarly, that's what the Ramban writes. We know we have a chiyuv even before we learn Torah to make a birkas haTorah, and therefore Kishem Hashem Ekra V'Godol Elokeinu. Because according to some, it's a birkas shevach v'hodah, because we're obligated to make a blessing of praise and thanksgiving, thanking God every day that He gave us the Torah. So that's the yesod of a korban todah, birkas hagomel, the concept of thanking God and publicizing the miracle. In fact, that's the whole yesod of Pesach. That's what Pesach's all about. It's all about hakaras hatov. It's one big sudas hodah, the whole Haggadah. Basically, what are we doing? We're going through the Maga. We're going through the story Matkel beganus. We begin with the bad, or the not so good. The Jews being in Mitzrayim, or the Jews were idol worshippers. and now we go free, the Geula. So we do it over a kosher bracha, 4 cups of bracha we make over the Haggadah. It's all about the Sudas Hodah, it's all about Hakaras HaTov, recognizing the miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to us. And that's why, in fact, there's a famous question they ask about the mitzvah of Sipor Yitzias Mitzrayim. We know there's a biblical mitzvah all year round to remember Yitzias Mitzrayim. Definitely every day of the year. Machok is in the Mishnah, which is also in the Haggadah, but there's a mitzvah every night of the year. During every day of the year, that's a given. Every night of the year, a machok is whether it applies tonight or Yemos HaMashiach. So we as Paskin, there's a mitzvah every night to remember Yitzias Mitzrayim. So what's so special about Pesach night? It's the same old story again. We do it every night. So there are many answers, but as Rav Chaim has explained, it's enough all year round just to mention it. I read Laman Tizkor, I mentally think about it, I say it, and that's enough. But on Pesach night, that's not enough. We have to do it with all the other, with the matzah and maror. In fact, there's 3 aspects. The night of Pesach, it's not enough just to mentally and verbally remember it, but we need the experiential. Now, it's not enough just to talk about it, but we do it eating the matzah, the maror, the Dalet Koshes, going through the stories. If you're Sephardi, you really, even build it out more. You throw frogs around during the 10 plagues, whatever you do at your Haggadah. But it's experiential as well. And that's not even enough. You need to got it to Levincha. You got to give it over to the next generation as well. So the whole Pesach Seder is all about Hakaras HaTov, and it's the focus the night of Pesach is that we're free. That we know we went from slavery to freedom, from Avdus to Chayras. And in fact, the question is, why do we have to begin with Avdus? Why do we need the slavery part? We're celebrating tonight. Let's focus on the good stuff. This gets talk with our freedom. Why are you dreaming about slavery? I don't want to hear about that tonight. So the answer is you have to hear about it tonight. Why do you have to hear about it tonight? Because if you want to know where freedom is, you have to know what slavery is. The power of contrast. You have to know, like anything in life, we all appreciate sight as much as we can, and I'm sure we appreciate a lot if we thought about it. But ultimately, someone who was once blind and now can see has a greater appreciation than we do. Because someone who can see all the time, by definition, you're going to take. Of course, we appreciate it, but there's going to be an element of taking it for granted. But someone who, at least right away, like once you start seeing, you can start taking it for granted also. But the moment you weren't able to see for a long time, and all of a sudden you did a surgery or something, the feeling, if you could keep that feeling then, the power of the Hakaras HaTov you have. So it's the power of contrast. To understand, to know what light is, you got to know what darkness is. In other words, if you don't know what the other one, you don't really fully understand what it's all about. So that's the power of contrast. So we have to first focus on the slavery. The focus isn't on the slavery. The slavery is a din in the chayras. We only in order to fulfill our mitzvah of Chayim Adam Liros es Atzmo Kilu Yatsa Mi Mitzrayim, of feeling like we have to actually go ahead to feel free. We have to actually know about the slavery, but that's just coincidental to get us to this feeling of chayras, of freedom. And in fact, that's why Rav Selevan explained, how does the Haggadah begin? Halach Ma'anya. It begins with the Halach Ma'anya, and we begin with inviting the guest to our Seder. This is called Difkin Yetze V'Yecho. All who are hungry, let them come and eat. All who are needy, let them come and celebrate. So, we see, the question is, it's nice to invite guests, but it's a separate discussion. We're not going into it now, but obviously it's a little late. It's a joke, you're inviting people now. no one's even there. You're already at the meal already. Like, who's going to hear you? I'm inviting anyone who's at my table to eat. No, so of course the invitations went out before. So then still the question is, but why put it in the text of the Haggadah? Okay, of course, every Shabbos you invite guests, Yontif. So why over here did it become the text of the Seder? So the Rav explained, because that's the essence of the night. We want to accentuate our freedom. And how do we do that? How do we accentuate our freedom? By inviting it. Because a servant, a slave, doesn't have their own time. They don't control their own. They don't make decisions. Whatever the master tells them, they do. However, how do you demonstrate your freedom and using it in a good way? By inviting guests. I decide I want to have guests over. I want to do this. That's the whole Karban Toda, publicizing the miracle. Here at Pesach night, we want to publicize Yitzias Mitzrayim and your freedom. So the focus is on the freedom, and that's how we begin it. We demonstrate it by inviting guests. And in fact, that's what they point out. Why no bracha on Sipor Yitzias Zayim? Sipor Yitzias Zayim is a biblical mitzvah. We make blessings even on rabbinical mitzvahs. We even make blessings on customs, certain customs, depending how many, if you're Ashkenaz or Sfard. But everyone agrees you make brachas on some minhagim. So Sipor Yitzias Zayim is a biblical mitzvah. So it's a biblical mitzvah. It's a biblical mitzvah. So where's the beef? Where's the bracha? Because we always know we make brachas before. So many answers given, but I'll explain one of the answers I heard from Rav Nissen Albert, who was a Talmud Muvak of Rav Moshe Feinstein on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. So he used to give a new answer to this question every year. So I'll just share one of those answers, not all 15 or whatever they were. So he says like this: what are we focusing on the night of Pesach? We're reclining, we're dipping. It's derech cheres, to show our freedom. So, what do you do when you make a bracha? Asher kiddush shalom mitzosa v'tzivanu. You're saying, God, you're commanding me. Tonight, we want to accentuate all year round. We focus on Eved Hashem. We do things kach siva Hashem. God told me to do it, I do it. And that's what we use. But the night of Pesach is different. Since when do we have to get matzah mishama? Well, why am I eating matzah? Let's explain it. It's giving the Tama mitzvah, because the night of Pesach is all about our freedom, and we want to focus on our freedom. So if we focus on our freedom, so we want to de-emphasize the bracha. The bracha shows we're in Eved Hashem. And the night of Pesach, we want to show we're free. So therefore, Chazal said no bracha on the mitzvah of Sipor Yitzias. The whole purpose is to show off our cheres and to have the whole Akaras HaTov, Karban Toda, Birkas HaGomel, as the Vilna Gaon explains as well. He has a pshat on, he connects the 4 different cups and other things to the 4, that the Jews in Mitzrayim went through those 4 stages, and Jelia Birkas HaGomel, and that's what the Netziv writes. That's why similar. We always invite many people on Pesach, because when you're being Mefarsem Hanes, Sudas Mitzvah, you want to have as many people as possible, like the Karban Toda. A very small amount of time, a lot of food, something you cannot consume on your own. And the point is, when it comes to Nisim and miracles, we have to publicize. And that's what Moshe told Yisro. The Brisker Rav says he was in fulfillment when Moshe was telling Yisro about the miracles. They didn't know he was in fulfillment of the mitzvah of publicizing miracles. And that's what the Karban Tod is, the Birkas HaGomel. And that's why the Chi of Suda on Purim, because Purim is the din of Kabbalah HaTorah, Kimu v'Kiblu. When we make a Siyam, it's an accomplishment of Torah, and we make and as the Ramban writes, the Birkas HaTorah is the Birkas Shevach V'Odah on the fact that we received the Torah, and that's what Purim, that's what the night of Pesach is all about. It's from Avdus to Cheres. The Avdus isn't the important part. So why do we talk about it? Because in order to appreciate what Chayris is, you have to know what Avdus is. And that's why Matchel B'Ganus, we have to begin with the not so good news, not because we want you to know about the not, because in order to appreciate where you are now, you have to know where you came from. And that's why the focus is on we begin the Seder Halach Ma'anya, it's called Difkin Yetzei V'Yecho. All are hungry coming in. Why we put it into the text of the Haggadah? You invited the people weeks ago. Because that's the Rav Salvation explained, that's the Yisod of the night of Pesach is freedom. Only a free person could have guests over and invite people. If you're an Eved, you don't control your own destiny. And that's why all year round we focus on Kach Siva Hashem, Asher Kedisham Tzav et Sivan. It's all about being an Eved Hashem. But the night of Pesach, we go Matzah Mishum Ma. Let's start, well, not because God said so, no. Pesach night, we go into the Tamim, Mara, what do we eat it, etc. Pesach Matzah Mara. It's a night we're focusing on our freedom. And that's why Chazal said no bracha on the mitzvah of Sipor Yitzir Zion. But his whole purpose is to show off the Chayris and the freedom. And that's why one of the many reasons why Chazal did not institute a bracha on Sipor Yitzias Mitzrayim.